In the beginning was the Tao, and the Tao was with God, and the Tao was God. That is how John 1, verse 1 reads in the Chinese version of the Bible. I was as surprised as anybody and delighted, actually, to find that out, actually, very recently, like last week. The Tao, the title of the stream is Taoism and Chill. I have all my Taoism books here, right? I've got like a billion. Check it out. We're going to go through some of these, if not most of them. Tao Te Ching, Tao of Wisdom. So all sorts of great books to get into. But I wanted to connect it to what everybody knows, right? You know the Bible. You know Jesus. And I often forget how not everybody knows Taoism like I do. And I don't even know it that well. I've just been familiar with it for many years, and I always knew, the first time I read the Tao Te Ching, I was like, this book is just a totally different level for me. And, getting into the way of service, studying the Bible over the last several years. I was raised on the Bible, but really studying it over the last several years. It's been incredibly helpful and exciting to see how the truths in the Tao Te Ching connect to ideas in the Bible. This quote, "In the beginning was the Tao, and the Tao was with God, and the Tao was God." I'll show you the quote here. You can see it right in the middle. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Right here in the middle. And that is John 1, verse 1. And here's how it reads in the NASB, which I have found to be the most strict adherence to the word-for-word translation, which I think is really important, as I found out when I was studying the topic of hell. And I'm actually going to be releasing an edited video tomorrow on that topic. I'm really excited about that. I think it's really good. Talking about how hell, eternal, and punishment are, all three of those words are mistranslated in almost every Bible. And this is the only Bible that actually has a little note next to the word hell that says Gehenna, which is what Jesus said. It's a real place. So that's an important piece of information about the word hell. Don't want to get too far off topic. Watch the video tomorrow if you're excited about it. I do want to say hi to everybody in the chat. We've got Susan and Ian and Timothy and Eleanor and Matthew. Welcome to the chat, everybody. I only see 3 viewers, so I hope you guys didn't get disconnected or something weird's happening. I always get a warning from YouTube. I should probably solve that problem, but I don't know. It's never really been a problem. So you guys tell me if everything's good in the chat. I really appreciate that. You guys are my mods. You're my team. I was going to read you John 1, verse 1 here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. It's talking about Jesus, and all things came into being through him and apart from him. So the translators of the Chinese version of the Bible chose to use the word Tao instead of word. And it's almost, to me, and the actual Greek word is logos, which I know has far more implications than the word, right? It's funny, English is the most widely spoken language on the planet, and it's the one that I know, pretty much. But, it's kind of important to understand what these words mean in these other languages, which is what the Bible comes from. So I wanted to compare that to Genesis, right? Genesis 1. And I think there's some more words here that can connect to the idea of the Tao. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was a formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So what you can see in this picture, and this is similar to John 1, verse 1, but there's a little different and interesting detail. One is written in Greek and the other is written in Hebrew. But here you have words like emptiness, darkness, the deep, the surface of the waters. And all these things almost exist independent of God. Now, I don't think that that's the metaphysical truth, but the idea is that God has kind of divided himself. What I believe is that we are all part of God. Creation is God. It's all connected. There's never a disconnect. And ultimately, everything is one. All is one with God. But in the creation story, God had to differentiate himself. And this is where you have yin and yang, okay? And then the Tao is like the feminine aspect of God, or the deep, the void, the darkness, right? The eternalness, the eternal potentiality of creation. And then God put his infinite intelligence and creativity into that to create all that is. And so the study of the Tao, to me, the study of the Tao is vital to understanding a full picture of the metaphysical truth that we exist in. And I think a lot of people can understand Western Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. They're all very focused on a masculine aspect of God, which is obviously very important. But I think people have forgotten the feminine aspect of God. And it causes you to have an incomplete picture of God. There is the personified God, and then there is the impersonal aspect of God. They both exist, and they both form this complete picture that we can't quite even grasp, because it has this emptiness, this darkness. And I actually have the Tao Te Ching pulled up here. So both of those words, I believe, appear. But let's find the word darkness. Perfect. It's the first chapter. I was going to read you guys the first chapter anyways. But let's read that quote specifically. Mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding. So let's read the full first passage of the Tao Te Ching so that you can understand it in context. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding. And that is indeed what I'm trying to help you guys with. I want you to see all understanding. Can we accomplish that in a YouTube live stream? Everyone in the chat now all of a sudden has complete understanding. Again, that's the first passage of the Tao Te Ching. The first passage, or the first chapter of the Bible, speaks of this same darkness. Now again, the Genesis doesn't really give any credit to this darkness, whereas the Tao Te Ching, it's all about this darkness. It's all about the void, the eternal isness of everything, in which God himself somewhat exists inside of. But I believe it's a paradox. I believe it's combined. And I also think, an important part of this first chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. What that first paragraph means is that I'm going to attempt to explain this to you in words, but my words will fail. I think we can all agree that's how God works. You can read the whole Bible and you can spend your whole life praying and meditating to God. And many people do, right? And still never understand it fully. Never understand God totally. And that is the great beauty and challenge of life and existence. It's a paradox. So the unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. The unnameable is the eternally real means what we can't explain is what is actually real. I think this is an important epiphany that I've had lately. All of our concepts and thoughts and plans and even emotions are all responses to or our limited understanding of creation. But creation, all the magic and power of God and all the ordinary things of life, all of it contained. Man, I thought I turned off notifications. All of it is contained within the unnameable, the eternally real. And then God and the Word, right? Naming, again, there's so many correspondencies. So in John 1, the Word is the Word, Logos. And here he says, naming is the origin of all particular things. So if you can imagine, God gave form and names to that which he created out of the darkness within darkness. The gateway to all understanding. That's my opener, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what you guys have to say. Okay, Susan says, all good here. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, Susan. I just needed to make sure that we've got audio and visual, all right? And a good internet connection. That's the key. I'll just tweak this down a little notch here. And, yeah, you guys don't mind if I turn off my notifications. I thought they were off, but I'm going to do it again. Let's see here. Yeah, they got turned back on somehow. All right. All fixed. No more noises. Probably distracts me more than it distracts you guys, would be my guess. But that's important. It's important. All right. What do you guys think? Tell me. I'm here to hang out with you guys, my live viewers that actually want to hang out and discuss metaphysical certainty. Or uncertainty is really what we're talking about today. That is Taoism. It is kind of the great uncertainty. Understanding and appreciating the uncertainty. So, Matthew says, funny that you bring this up. We just read Genesis as a family last night. We used 3 different versions of the Bible just to discuss the different wording. That's what we're doing right now, Matthew. Amazing. Perfect synchronicity to start off the show. Amazing. Amazing. What can you say when a synchronicity happens other than amazing? He did it again. God did it again. Right? It's wild how a slight change of wording changes the verse significantly. Exactly. Exactly. Eleanor says, can you explain what darkness means in that passage? In the Tao Te Ching passage, I thought maybe it meant more than just literal dark. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The darkness, I mean, that is the Tao. The Tao is translated as the way, but it's also translated as like everything that is and nothing. And that's what Lao Tzu describes in the Tao Te Ching, right? We're going to read more of it, so hopefully it'll become more clear. But in order to really understand the Tao, the darkness within darkness, you have to study it and you have to appreciate it. And I believe that Taoism is one of the best studies for understanding this feminine aspect of God, the yin to the yang of God. There's a creator of us and the universe, at least on this fractal multiverse, I think. I mean, that's my best guess. And corresponding to that creator, there's a father and a mother aspect. And and I think it is the same being, but it also isn't, right? So if you want to understand these things, you have to, read these incredible pieces of, literature of wisdom from thousands of years ago, and also meditate and just experience life. And, if you really want to know the answer, you will. You just have to stay dedicated to it. Matthew says, I think I have a theory. God is and was before all. God is the source of all knowledge. God taught all people in their language and culture, but God taught all people the same thing. Each culture interpreted their learning in their own ways, so all stories are very similar, yet different enough to make us all crazy. Darkness equals the void in the Bible. Think a blank canvas to create the universe. Yeah, I mean, we get into speculation, and I feel like in order to describe what you think, Matthew, you'd have to, come be a guest on the show, which we're going to have to make happen. I've kind of explained what I think, and I think what you're saying is true, but I also think that it might even go further than that, right? Like, I think that there might be infinite creation time periods before this time period, and there are infinite into the future. Because what I've found is that as you study this stuff, whatever you can't imagine, basically, like infinity and eternity and infinite complexity, that is creation. And so, or existence, or, the infinite fractal of creation. So I think that, and I think this is a point that I was like, oh, should I make that point? But I'm going to go for it, because I only have 3 viewers, and only 3 people can get mad at me right now. The Christian Abrahamic masculine religions focus on this life. And I think that that is very powerful and important. However, I believe that we live many lives. I believe in reincarnation. We've talked about this on the channel. Pretty open about it. I think we are eternal, both infinitely into the past and into the future. And so I think that Taoism helps you to understand that aspect of reality. And this aspect of reality comes into the present physical moment, because the present moment is all that exists. We talked about this paradox as well. So, yeah, I think I want to bring to the world a comparative study and an integration of Taoism and Christianity. And I think that you're going to see that it's pretty awesome. In fact, this book right here is written by a famous Christian monk. And it's the best study of Chengzu. Oh, I can see it's out of focus. Chengzu is basically the inheritor of Lao Tzu. He came right after Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching. And again, I haven't even finished reading this. But, yeah. So, and I'm probably the most familiar with Taoism of anybody around here. So, I'm just excited. I'm excited to share this with you guys and with the world in the near future. Let's see here. The last one for Eleanor. Okay. Susan says, what do you think about CERN trying to find the God particle? Yeah, I don't know what to think. I mean, I've heard a lot of crazy stories, but it could just be some people doing some crazy stuff that doesn't have any real effect. I know that they've got like a statue of Shiva on the outside, and there's like satanic something like outside CERN. It seems weird. I feel like most people are like, we don't know what they're doing. And I mean, maybe read their research papers, I guess. Like, I don't know. I haven't studied some of these attempts to figure out reality through particles. But I will say that I haven't seen a whole lot of wisdom coming out of particle physics in a long time. It's like the last thing that they came up with that was good was, I feel like my sound's too low there. The last thing they came up with that was any good was quantum physics, and that was Max Planck in like the early 1900s. I mean, if they can prove that they're going to do something useful with the billions of dollars that they're spending, then that's great. But I don't really think much has come out of that. I guess people are working on quantum computing, so I haven't kept up with the leading edge of physics, but I haven't seen a lot of it come into the popular culture, which says to me that it's not actually interesting or useful. It seems like I think they're kind of on a fool's errand because they're trying to study reality through physical structures, but reality is composed of consciousness, and so they're going about it backwards. That's not to say that they're not going to find anything. I don't know. They could find something amazing tomorrow or today. I don't know. But that's my take on it, I guess, at this point. Eleanor says, Matthew, yes, but I feel like the Tao Te Ching passage suggests more than just a void. The Genesis story makes it sound more like a void because it doesn't give much credit to the darkness, like Danny said. Right. Yeah. I mean, thank you, Eleanor. Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like the Tao Te Ching, and there's actually a passage in the Tao Te Ching, and while I'm pissing people off, older than God. There it is. The Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. It is hidden, but always present. I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. Passage 4. It's a great number, by the way. Older than God. So that's what the Tao Te Ching says, at least that translation. And you can take that for what you think. I've heard it explained this way. There's a Holy Trinity, okay? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father is the oneness of all creation. Through the Son, the masculine aspect of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, the feminine aspect of God, all of creation is created and animated with life. But the Father remains singular, and all three of those things are a part of God or are God. So that's how I understand it, and I think that this is another perfect connection for you guys to understand. The Holy Spirit, I think, is the Tao. Now, I'm not sure about it, but that's my current understanding. So I think if you can suspend your disbelief when you listen to my videos and hear the arguments, you'll see that this will fill a gap in your understanding of the universe. While I'm pissing people off, I will tell you this. I think I disagree with mainstream Christianity, and I think certain interpretations of what Jesus taught will agree with me, I think we are all always saved. We have always been saved, and we will always be saved. That is a lesson taught in Taoism. Now, that is true, but you could end up in Gehenna, or hell, as it's commonly called. And I think eventually you'll get out of that state. So it's still very important to focus on doing the right thing in this life. So while you are always saved, as in you can, even if you're burning in eon of hellfire, I won't say eternal because they didn't say that in the Bible. If you're burning in it for an eon in hellfire, you can still attain enlightenment by meditating into the Tao, and eventually you will escape your torture. So I think both are true. Both are incredibly important lessons. Both read the Bible and understand all the lessons there. And also, my friends, read the Tao Te Ching. Do yourself a favor, okay? Doesn't even take that long. It's like a couple hours. Matthew says, agreed. Think who wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, and then how many times it was translated, and then how much was left out. I like Danny's explanation. If we read the Hebrew version, it's more clear. Exactly. And this is like the infinite complexity of reality. When you study this stuff, you're going to find out you don't know most of it. You know, it's like as you grow, the more you learn that you don't know. And then, of course, there is what you don't know, which is out into that sphere. That is where the Tao resides. Hey, Ryan's here. Welcome, Ryan. Ryan says, sounds like it came in at an interesting point. You sure did, Ryan. I sure hope so. I'm interested. I don't know about you. Matthew says, actually, I do know about you. You said you're interested. Matthew says, older than which God? That was a teaser question. Exactly. And that's let's not dance around the subject. The polytheism of Hinduism is an understanding of this fractal, kind of divided out nature of God. So, according to Yogananda, who I've learned some Hinduism from, basically Hinduism teaches that God is one, but then you may worship or basically get close with an aspect of God, and that's often easier to understand and conceptualize to allow you to have a connection to God, to worship a particular aspect of God. And it's interesting as I learn more about Hinduism and Taoism, how it all integrates into this idea that God and consciousness is all that is, and it makes the full picture. And that's one of the things I'm working on and explaining with the way of service. Because I think, as I've said, we're entering a new age, and I think that we're all having this feeling that there's a new understanding that's to be had about reality and about all that is and about existence. So, yeah, I'm excited to explore this with you guys. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do think that the comparative study of all these different texts has really helped me to see that, like you said, Matthew, I think you said this, there's not any one answer to it, but also, by studying it, you will learn more about it. It's not that you're not learning more. So the different aspects and the different angles on what it is, what is this, what is reality? Where am I? Like I'm like talking into a box with a microphone and there's a light shining on me and people are talking to me through, this chat box right here. Let's see, where's the chat box in space? Anyways, so what is this? Where are we? Right? What is the present moment? It's, I think it's one of the coolest things to study. And I think the study of it helps you to have a better life. And that's what it's all about. I think my favorite thing that I've learned from Taoism is really appreciating the present moment without resistance or fear, embracing your eternal nature. And the paradox is that when you embrace that eternalness, you instantly crystallize into the present moment. You're so present and fully there. And it's so ecstatic to really appreciate it, to really appreciate that my eyes can see and my ears can hear and my mind can think. Ryan says, what about Mary being the feminine aspect? Depending on which stream of Christianity you're looking through, Mary is more than what meets the common eye. Yeah. I mean, Mary is a perfect example of the fact that you really don't know much about the feminine aspect from the mainstream Bible. She's got a few chapters in the Bible, but what is the Mother Mary? I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I guess I haven't released the video about it, but I talked about it on the live stream. You guys have been there. When I was in Vegas and I prayed to the Divine Mother, and I had a vision that infiltrated my entire perception and allowed me to see all the women that were in the room. There was a lot of them because most of the dealers are women at the World Series of Poker, so there had to be, hundreds of women. And there's cocktail waitresses, and there's a few women playing. And I just had this visceral feeling that they were all connected to the divine feminine. And you better believe that the mother of Jesus was connected to the divine feminine. Matthew says, we speak of God, Father in heaven, but we rarely speak of Mother in heaven. Exactly. And this is a big lesson I learned from Yogananda. The feminine aspect of God. And there's some great videos from SRF Anandamoy. I'll have to, if you want to know, I'll share it with you. It's some of the best talks about the feminine aspect of God and, that understanding. I'll have to cover it on this channel. I feel like I'm going to have to cover some of Anandamoy's talks. It seems like a really good idea, actually. Turn this up at a little notch there. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we rarely speak of Mother in heaven. Religion around the world almost sounds like a game of telephone. Exactly. So close to the same, yet so different. And this connects directly, Matthew, with the idea that we're emerging from the Dark Ages. Again, people don't appreciate. The Emperor Qin ordered all books in China burned. The Romans burned the Library of Alexandria. The Tomb of the Magi was burned, which nobody knows about, but it had, 1 million pages or something ridiculous. All these empires collapsed. Think of how many books and treasure were just plundered and destroyed and lost. We have no fucking idea, dude. We have no fucking idea. So, and this is a big part of Taoism, humility. Humility to not know. Lao Tzu talks about that a lot in the Tao Te Ching. we don't know. And you're going to learn and understand what's real way faster when you admit that you don't know. Eleanor says, the language is so confusing. Oneness of everything, neutral. Masculine and feminine does not match up with the Father, masculine, the Son, masculine, and the Holy Spirit, feminine. I mean, I agree with you, but the words used to represent big, intangible ideas are not helping sort it out. You better believe it. Thank you for a perfect connection. We don't have any effing idea, man. We don't have any idea. The translations are not great. They come from the Dark Ages. So, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you, understand these things through meditation and study. Don't take any one translation of any text as the final say about anything. Okay? The Bible, written in English, is not the inerrant Word of God. You have to read it in the original text, and even then, you're probably going to have some issues. That's just reality. God does not want us to just read one book and have all the answers. That's not what life is about. God, as the first passage says, right? And I often replace Tao with God. The God that can be told is not the eternal God. The God that we can describe and put into stories, and you have to understand these are all allegories. They're all parables. Jesus taught in parables. They are not a complete understanding or a full picture. Eleanor, you taught me this because you're reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. The understanding that we can't focus a flashlight onto the truth, that the truth is actually a peripheral experience of everything. So yeah, the words are not going to make sense. The Father and the Son, you could say God and the Son, right? Because God, or the Tao, God and the Tao, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the divine feminine. I use those words because people are familiar with them. But I think a true understanding of the nature of reality, or at least a closer understanding, right? Because I don't think we will ever fully understand it, a closer understanding to the truth is going to be described in a different way. Marco says, hi, welcome to the stream, Marco. Ryan says, has anybody here read the Gospel of Mary? I don't think I have. Not familiar. Matthew says, we also have to remember who the first 5 books of the Bible were written for. Hebrews that were enslaved for 400 years and had little concept of the world around themselves. So the Bible may have left out some things. So you've read the Gospel of Mary too? Oh, Matthew? Okay, well, put it in the chat. What is the Gospel of Mary about? Like, what's good? Share. Matthew says, even today we are tearing down all monuments and not teaching history. Yeah, but, the Satanists can tear down all the monuments they want. It's all, written on the blockchain now. It's all on the internet. You can find everything. I feel like everything that's been put onto the internet is, permanent. And so much has been put on the internet that, they can try. They can try. But they're fighting a losing battle against the tide of consciousness. And our technology is just scratching the surface of what our human consciousness is capable of. And I find that when you are connected to God and the Tao, none of these things matter. They can't affect you. When you trust God and the Tao to take care of you, the people who are tearing down monuments and teaching people lies, they'll just be part of the great miracle that is going to happen. And I see it all the time. So Eleanor says, Heidi gave me a copy of the Gospel of Mary. We have a copy in the house you can read. Oh, there we go. Amazing. I own a copy of the book you're talking about. I just haven't read it. I feel like I've seen all of our books. I feel like I would remember that. All right, well, in any case, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying yourselves. Welcome to the stream. I'm Danny with The Way of Service, live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I think we should read the next passage of the Tao Te Ching. Having read the fourth and the first, we should read the second and the third. Chapter 2. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. Such beautiful poetry. I love this book. How do I even explain this one? I mean, this chapter is about yin and yang, right? It's the idea that in order for creation to exist, God had to kind of divide himself into two different things. And I think that is what the Spirit of God hovering over the deep is. The deep exists, but I think most people argue that, creation didn't come before God. God came before creation. And so in order to understand it, I think it's helpful to see that there became this masculine heaven aspect of God and the feminine earth aspect of God. That is yin. Yin is earth and yang. Yang and yin. And so for anything to exist, you have to have two polar opposites. When some things are good, other things become bad. And so really embracing the fact that all of creation is a part of God, created by God. Another place I've gotten into trouble with Christians is the passage in the Bible where God said that he created evil. God says, I created evil. Created everything. So he created evil too. We have to embrace and accept that creation contains everything, or else you will be in this state of resistance all the time. And as the Hua Hu Ching says, that can go on for many lifetimes, many long and tedious lifetimes. So better to learn the lesson, accept that there is a dark and a light, there's a shadow side of yourself and a positive light aspect of yourself, and don't shun one for the other. Accept that their interplay, the combination of yin and yang, is what creates all of existence and allows you to experience anything. An analogy is, imagine light without any shadow, or imagine shadow without any light. More shadow or a change in the shadow of all shadow means nothing. You don't see it, there's no change. If everything is light and you move or change the light, you increase or reduce the light, there will be no change. It's just white, bright light. In order for there to be existence, the two have to play in the realm of creation. And that's where we are. I think this is a perfect time for a video. Which one is it? Oh, yeah. So, I mentioned Alan Watts. Got one of his books here, which I haven't read yet. And he is one of the great Taoists, contemporary Taoist thinkers. I'm going to play for you one of my favorite speeches by him, and it's going to help come close to what I think we're discussing here.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure you could conceive. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Well, something is going to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And you would dig that and come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices you would have, of playing that you weren't God. Because the whole nature of the Godhead, according to this idea, is to play that he's not. The first thing he says to himself is, man, get lost. Because he gives himself away. The nature of love is self-abandonment, not clinging to oneself. Throwing yourself out, as in, for example, in basketball, you're always getting rid of the ball. You say to the other fellow, have a ball. See? And that keeps things moving. That's the nature of life. So in this idea, then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality. Not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that, only you're pretending you're not.
What'd you think of that? I think it's a plausible explanation of where I am right now. I am dreaming a dream that I am myself. In this continuous 40-year period that it's been so far. Matthew says, Christ commanded his disciples to write down as much as they could about his teachings. The New Testament includes only the journals written by the men. The Gospel of Mary is her journal. Ah, that's, wow. I'm going to have to verify that. But that's fascinating. Renee says, hello. Welcome, Renee. Welcome to the live stream. Ryan says, I have not actually read it, but it was introduced to my awareness and I'm curious to read it. Yeah? Audiobook it, Ryan. Matthew says, the Gospel of Mary includes many of the parables Jesus taught. Her version of the Sermon on the Mount, her writing, if it is really her writing, that's my question, right? Where did this come from? Had a very different tone than the apostles. Warmer. That's important. You know, the divine mercy of the Divine Mother. That's what I felt when I was at the poker table, right? Because I had experienced, leading up to this, I got knocked out like 5 times. It felt very much like my poker failures of my life in the past. And I was like, please, let this not be like that. And then, boom, pocket queens, the vision. I was listening to music and, you know, synchronistically, it was women singing in these songs. Yeah. The mercy, the love for her children. That is the divine mother, the divine feminine aspect of God. In some ways, Jesus tries to be father-mother in the story because he's saving and healing. These are kind of feminine things to do. Jesus was in many ways feminine. He was also masculine, of course. But we have to understand this aspect of God to have a full understanding and to have a full release. You know, I've talked about, there's been a few moments where I've almost wanted to cry on stream, but I'm probably not going to. I'm too much in the zone. But, you know, letting these truths melt through you, feeling the mercy and the healing of Divine Mother, of the Divine Feminine. I recommend it. I recommend it. Eleanor says, Watts says, not God in the politically kingly sense. I finished that in my head with God in the ordinary sense. Key word ordinary. This is why I love my wife. She gets it. Ordinary. Taoism is about ordinary life being the same as the highest, most divine thing you can imagine. That is why I teach the way of service. To live this life perfectly is to follow the way of service, to honor that all that is God. The person you serve is you, is God. And in this way, we perfect ourselves. That quote, do we not perfect ourselves? Should I just find it? It's in that it's a fantastic, we did a whole 2 live streams about this video. Lao Tzu quotes. Yeah, this one.
From wonder to wonder, existence opens. is able to perfect herself? Things. Is it not through her selflessness that she is able to perfect herself?
Is it not through her selflessness that she is able to perfect herself? That is how we attain divinity and perfection, through the ordinary living of our life as the master teaches. That's what Taoism teaches. Matthew says, here is an idea. Pretend Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother is literally your spirit father and mother. Now think of how you would teach your own children to become like you or better than you. Teach you good from bad. How would you accomplish this? Really interesting that you say that, Matthew, because I just watched a near-death experience where that's precisely what he explained. He had a pre-birth memory, or even a pre-existence memory, or a beginning of existence memory, where God said, you're going to go and have lifetimes if you want to become more like me, but you have to agree to do it. And he remembers questioning God and being like, well, can't you just make me like that? And God was like, yes, I can, but you reaching it through your own efforts and dedication to, I would call, the way from the Tao, that is more meaningful. For you to go down into the deep, into the darkness within darkness, to separate yourself from your divine father and mother and go out into the world. That's what he described. And I think that that is accurate from my understanding of from a lot of different cosmologies. It makes a lot of sense. Free will and our choice to follow whatever path or method of evolving into a greater being of ourselves, whether we become gods or just angels or enlightened beings, whatever you want to call it. It's all probably the same thing. Just different levels, and there's fractals and dimensions and all this. But if you want to do that, you have to go and do it. And you have to choose it through free will. And I realize that there's another aspect to free will that a lot of people don't talk about. Everybody talks about and understands free will as your ability to choose what to do, how to respond to things, where to take your life. But what people don't realize is that we also have the free will to define things however we want, to define things as good and bad, even. And while if you don't align that with God's definition of good and bad, or the actual truth, you will experience a very specific experience in creation. This is why evil is allowed. And people who spend whole lifetimes being evil exists. It's real. I mean, we all see it in real life. Because free will is absolute, or as absolute as God could make it. I think we're all still a part of God, and as I said earlier, we're all ultimately saved. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're not all ultimately saved. Maybe some descend into the darkness for eternity. But I don't think, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. After an eternity of time, eventually there's going to be a return. Just like after an eternity of time, the greatest, highest thing might descend into the darkest thing. You know? I mean, we don't know what infinity in the past and into the future holds. What has happened in creation, in universes or multiverses that we can't even imagine? You know, it's real. I think it's real. I think it's real stuff. People want to stay limited to this lifetime and this planet and, you know, what's happening here, and that's what the Bible focuses on, and I think in a lot of ways that's the most important thing to focus on, because you should be focused on this life and in today and in the present moment, on here and now, right? Oh, I can hear my favorite part of Frozen 2 in the other room. Elsa meets her mom in the cave in Atahalan, and she realizes that she is the fifth spirit. She is the fifth element among the other four elements. Beautiful. Well, so I promised you guys we would continue reading through the Tao Te Ching. I find that it's important not to go too fast with this thing. It is very short. You could read the whole thing in 2 hours, but you're not going to grasp it. So as I've explained, this passage is explaining basically how creation came into being through the differentiation of the different things. Right? So the first chapter said, naming is the origin of all particular things. And here he's explaining the naming. When some people see things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Here's another paradox. You can imagine the deep, the darkness created God. It's older than God, as the Tao Te Ching says. And also, maybe God created the darkness and the deep. It's like a paradox. And perhaps throughout the different universes, it happened in a different order. I don't know. That's an important aspect, is to remember that we don't know. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. So what he's saying here is that instead of getting caught in the naming of everything as good or bad, things arise and you let them come. Things disappear and you let them go. We don't hold on to things in our life. We don't try to be always on one side of every issue or live our life in this extreme mode where we are habitually repeating the same emotion and the same experience and avoiding everything else. Instead, we should be embracing all that life brings us, the good and the bad, the challenges and the joys. Hinduism says this same thing in the Bhagavad Gita. We have the right to do our work, but we do not have the right to get what we expect out of it. We have to let God and the universe give to us what it will when we give ourselves earnestly into the world. And that is how we can last forever. Chapter 3. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. Here he explains again why the extreme life of focusing on one aspect of life leads to failure. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless, right? If we venerate our leaders, even Lao Tzu himself, or maybe even Jesus, if we overesteem these people, and I hesitate to say it about Jesus, but the idea being, when you give everything away to them, you become powerless. And I see that a lot in my Christian brethren. They give everything to Jesus, and they themselves are not a participant in their life. God doesn't want that for his children. So you must take responsibility for your life and also recognize that Jesus was telling the truth when he said, "These works and greater shall you do." Jesus didn't put any limit on the potential of humanity. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal, right? You can imagine, and sometimes I read this and I think of the golden age that's been lost, when people lived in harmony with one another and didn't overvalue possessions. I think we live in an age of overvaluing possessions. I joke with my wife, it's Dwapara Yuga, it's the Bronze Age, it's the age right after the Dark Age, where everybody just was trying to survive. Now you don't have to worry about surviving, and we have all the things we need, and everybody's all excited about their things. But the truth of life and reality is that it's not about things. I mean, I think we can all pretty much agree on that if you're watching this live stream. And so eventually you'll realize overvaluing possessions doesn't make sense. And when you overvalue possessions, you're worried about people stealing from you. You're worried about, you're thinking about stealing from other people. Maybe not overtly, but how many people are working shitty jobs just to make money? Isn't that kind of like stealing? I mean, like if your job is taking away from the world, but you're getting paid for it, it's kind of a lie, isn't it? I don't know. The master leads by emptying people's minds. That's what I was saying. You have to acknowledge that you don't know. That's the key. Humility. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, right? Meditate. Bring the five elements into yourself. And weakening their ambition. Follow the way of service. Toughening their resolve. Challenges will happen. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Maybe that's why I only have 7 viewers. Actually, I love that I have 7 viewers. That's fantastic. It's a great number. Practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. And there is our first reference to non-action, Wu Wei. And I've learned a lot about Wu Wei as I've practiced it, and often it literally means don't do anything. Don't say the thing. That's probably the biggest lesson. You get a text message and you're like, what the hell is this? Don't respond, or respond in the most benevolent way you possibly can. When you think that you need to respond in anger or in any negative way, instead, do nothing. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right? Mother's wisdom. That is part of not doing. And also, we talked about simplicity recently. If you can eliminate the things that prevent you from not doing anything, either by finding help, like I argue with my wife that we should hire a little bit more help, because it's very, very important that you find a time to do nothing. And I think on a regular basis, on a daily basis, meditation is the best form of this. I love my Taoist understanding of meditation because there is nothing more relaxing than just existing and that being enough. Than just appreciating the present moment and that just being enough. Yeah. Yeah, Tim says, or your dog eats them. Exactly. Tim was just here and he saw my dog eat my shit and then he saw me get really pissed off about it. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm not perfect. Believe me, I'm nowhere near it. Yeah. Don't worry about me. But yes, that actually helps me, right? I mean, it's funny because when I'm mad at my dog about it, I'm like, yeah, I know, I can just buy another one. It doesn't matter, really. But part of me is just like, it's so wasteful and like, why did you do that to me? You know, you're supposed to be my best friend. You're my best friend and you destroyed my beautiful machete and my goggles and my flippers and my other pair of goggles and something every other day for the last 365 days because he's a giant puppy. Maybe that's what it is. It's just like, why are you doing this to me? My son. You're doing it to me. Again. Oh my God. Ryan says, without time, how could something be older? Well, maybe you just don't understand time, my friend. I mean, there's got to be time, right? Like, you know, I hear all these near-death experiences, and they're like, you know, time doesn't exist there. It's like, well, yeah, it did. There was a sequence of events, right? So, yeah, maybe you were dead for like an hour, and it felt like a lifetime or something, but that doesn't mean time doesn't exist. I don't know. I don't think either one of us understands time fully, so I don't think you can say that without time. There's without time. Maybe time has always existed. Maybe time is a feature of the Tao, of the void. It is time. I don't know. Or maybe it is the masculine aspect, right? Maybe time is what moves everything forward, and that is the masculine aspect of creation, moving through the feminine aspect, the void. Matthew says, Ryan, deep comment. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, yeah, you could be right, man. Without time, yeah, maybe the word doesn't mean anything. It is said, God sees past, present, and future as one. My understanding of this is the Akashic Records episode that we had a few months ago. It says in the Akashic Records that there is a record of everything that's ever happened and also everything that could happen. I think in order for us to have free will, the future is not determined. However, all potential futures are seen by God, and perhaps at an even higher level, they are part of God. It's all self-contained, and so he can see everything. But what you said kind of conflicts with the idea of free will, and I'd like to see how you respond to that, Matthew. If the future is already determined, how can there be free will? I think it's that God can see all potential futures, but he allows us the choice of which one to choose. Matthew says, practice not doing. So cool. Heidi and I have had a mantra in 2025, be still. It changed our perspective. Yeah, be still. Be still means practice not doing. I forget what I feel like it was on stream. I was talking about this quote. I said it was in the Simplicity stream. Be still literally translates in Hebrew to Hands off. Take your hands off. Renee says, it makes me think of that which you focus on is what you see. If all you see are the negatives, then that is the reality you experience. When we esteem power, it highlights a perceived scarcity. Exactly, Renee. Exactly. Yeah, Lao Tzu is explaining that when you focus in this way, you will experience this reality. It's in the previous passage as well. When some things are bad and some things are good, that's when you can see the two things. But what if you let go of those definitions? Then you will see the greater truth. Time is the key. We all make it home, but in which lifetime? Exactly. We have free agency to choose, but we may choose the longer path and more pain. But it eventually leads back home. Exactly, Matthew. Yes. This is what Yogananda teaches. He's like, now that you are aware of the spiritual path, why wouldn't you pour yourself into it and attain oneness with God in this lifetime? That's what he argues. Hard to argue with. That's why I'm a student of Yogananda's and his organization. I'm studying his lessons, his meditation lessons. It's the best meditation instructions I've ever found. And it really boils down to sitting in stillness and reaching out to God at the same time. It's like a paradox of pure beingness and also calling to God with all of your heart, as a child would call to a parent. Yes. That's why I teach the way of service, right? Because you can go and spend many lifetimes pursuing your selfish goals. You can do it. The Hua Hu Ching actually cautions on this. I'm going to find the passage for you. Lifetimes. Yes. Every departure from the Tao contaminates one's spirit. Anger is a departure. Resistance, a departure. Self-absorption, a departure. Over many lifetimes, the burden of contaminations can become great. There is only one way to cleanse oneself of these contaminations, and that is to practice virtue. What is meant by this? To practice virtue is to selflessly offer assistance to others, giving without limitations one's time, abilities, and possessions in service, whenever and wherever needed, without prejudice concerning the identity of those in need. If your willingness to give blessings is limited, so also is your ability to receive them. This is the subtle operation of the Tao. Here's another. The character of your existence is determined by the energies to which you connect yourself. If you attach yourself to gross energies, loving this person, hating that clan, rejecting one experience, or habitually indulging in another, then you will lead a series of heavy, attached lives. This can go on for a very long and tedious time. The way of the integral being is to join with higher things. By holding to that which is refined and subtle, she traverses refined and subtle realms. If she enters the world, she does so lightly, without attachment. In this way, she can go anywhere without ever leaving the center of the universe. Yes, so time. Time is the key, right? Fascinating. I feel like I'm not in focus. Why does the camera have to do that? Should I fix it? It's fine. It's fine. Matthew says, as man is now, God once was. As God is now, man may become. How? By learning and experiencing everything. We get to choose the way we learn. Is that from the Book of Mormon? In Hinduism, there are 4 learning paths. I think you're listing the 4 learning paths. Learning from study and growing to become divine. That's the hardest and steepest learning curve. Service is to learn to care for others, teaching others, and becoming a priest or a holy person. All 4 ways lead to the same end, just in different ways. So, study, service, teaching others, and becoming a priest? I'm not sure I follow. Yeah, I should know this stuff. The 4 ways, the 4 learning paths. Curious. Let's see. 4 Hindu learning paths. Oh, here we go. The 4 main Hindu learning paths to liberation are Jnana Yoga, knowledge and intellectual, Bhakti Yoga, devotion and emotional, Karma Yoga, selfless action and active, and Raja Yoga, meditation, scientific control. Fascinating. Yeah, so Yogananda says that he teaches Karma Yoga, or Kriya Yoga as he calls it, and so taking action, but also meditation. So I feel like he teaches all of those, but that's fascinating. I wonder if that's taught by Patanjali. It's not going to tell me, is it? That's all right. Joseph Smith quote, right? Ryan says, life is a design your own roller coaster experience with one choice at a time. The times I let go, time seems to fly, and I along with it. Is that good or bad? Is that good or bad, Brian? That's interesting. Fascinating. All right, well, I think we could do one more Tao Te Ching passage, and then maybe we'll close it out. Try not to cover too much. We are at, I guess I think it's been an hour and a half almost, which is the high end of how long I'd like to do these streams. Let me make sure I covered. Oh yeah, we read number 4 together a bit earlier, so I will not read it again. We covered 3. Not doing. Number 5. The Tao doesn't take sides. It gives birth to both good and evil. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners. The Tao is like a bellows. It is empty, yet infinitely capable. The more you use it, the more it produces. The more you talk of it, the less you understand. Hold on to the center. Fascinating. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners, which is, of course, related to my favorite line in the Hua Hu Ching. And this line is what made me start the way of service. Passage 2. Men and women who should who wish to be aware of the whole truth should adopt these practices of the integral way. These time-honored disciplines calm the mind and bring one into harmony with all things. The first practice is the practice of undiscriminating virtue. Take care of those who are deserving. Also and equally, take care of those who are not. When you extend your virtue in all directions, without discriminating, your feet are firmly planted on the path that returns to the Tao, on the path that returns to God. Ryan says, is life good or bad? Well, it's both, isn't it? That's what we've discussed. And yet the person who can perfect themselves by taking care of those who are deserving and those who are not will become closer to God, closer to the way that Jesus taught, the Christ within. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Danny with The Way of Service. Hit that like and subscribe button. Watch my video tomorrow about how eternal hell doesn't exist. And I'll see you next week on Tuesday, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.